Hi, my name is Marissa, and this is my presentation of historical events in special education. Throughout the years, there have been many significant court cases, laws, and amendments to better benefit exceptional students and their families and to get us where we are today. I'd like to take a look today at some of the major historical events that have impacted special education throughout the years. In the 1700s, genetic deficit theories and cultural deficit theories contributed to the two-track education system and gave the idea that European Americans were superior to other races. These theories are important to reference because they paved the way for segregation early on in education. We mostly hear about the segregation of blacks and whites in public school systems, but theories such as the two mentioned above on this slide stated that the disabilities and academic failures could be blamed purely on racial and ethnic diversity, thus creating a means of segregation not only based upon skin color, but based on intellectual ability. It was later proved in a statement released by the American Psychological Association in 1996 that research did not support genetic interpretation of IQ test score differences among races, thus proving theories like these as fallacy. In the 1890s, some of the first special education programs emerged, including delinquency prevention programs aimed at children that otherwise may not have be enrolled in school. You see, it wasn't uncommon for children that were poor or disabled to have poor attendance or even not attend school in the first place. By creating programs such as the delinquency prevention program, as well as other attendance laws, children were required to be enrolled in school and to attend regularly, or parents could face legal prosecution. Manual training classes provided children with classes on top of their general education that could be beneficial in their future careers. Children learned things such as cooking, shop work, and sewing. Home economics classes, or family consumer science classes are classes that have seemed to become less and less popular over the years. A hopeful prediction would be that classes such as these come back into style or even become required in the future. Students that have or are suffering from a wide range of diversities, whether it's poverty or a type of disability, could really benefit from manual training classes. We should be more proactive in teaching students basic life skills like banking, cooking, and cleaning than we currently are. Again, my hope for the future would be to further implement things such as manual training classes for all students, but especially for those that can struggle to maintain independence once they are out of school. Many remember Brown versus Board of Education as the case that ended segregation in schools in the sense of race. You may be wondering how this is a historical part of special education, but Brown versus Board of Education paved the way for equal education for all students, even those with disabilities. In 1954, the Supreme Court ruled that separation of students generates a feeling of inferiority as their status in the community that may affect their hearts and minds in a way that is unlikely to ever be undone. After the ruling on the case, parents of children with disabilities also began to bring lawsuits against school districts regarding the segregation and exclusion of their children with disabilities, calling it discrimination. The ESEA was a landmark legislation that provided resources to help ensure that disadvantaged students had access to quality education equal to education received by their peers. In 1966, the ESEA was amended to provide grant programs to help the initiation, expansion, and improvement of projects for the education of handicapped children. Yet again, in 1970, the ESEA was amended and replaced by the Education of the Handicapped Act. Again, grants and programs were established to help push states into developing and improving educational programs and resources for students with disabilities. However, neither of these programs mandated that the funds be used solely aimed for programs and projects used to assist children with disabilities, thus they didn't really have a significant impact on special education. Based on history, though, my predictions will be that in the future, programs aimed to encourage schools to improve and expand programs for children with disabilities will mandate their funds to go solely for specific programs used to benefit these children. In the 1970s, two cases became known as the catalyst for change. Both cases dealt yet again with the segregation of children with disabilities from children without. In Park, it was agreed that students with disabilities could not have a change in educational placement without including the parents and a means to resolve disputes. In Mills, the schools argued that educating children with disabilities was far too expensive. Yet again, it was found that children were being suspended, expelled, excluded, or transferred without due process of law. In 1972, an investigation led to the discovery of millions of children that were not receiving proper education. Congress then realized that proper education would increase independence and allow students with disabilities to become productive contributors to society rather than depending on it. They also realized that parents were not able to advocate for their children because they were led to believe that their children could not lead normal lives or be productive members of society. Park and Mills and many other cases led to legislation in 1972 that established in law the right to an education for all handicapped children. In 1975, Public Law 94-142, or the Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975, was enacted. Because of cases like Park and Mills, Congress enacted Public Law 94-142 so that all children with disabilities would receive access to an education provided by state and local agencies. Not providing these educational services could result in repercussions against the schools. An elaborate system of legal checks and balances called procedural safeguards were implemented to protect the rights of children as well as their parents. Public Law 9412 would become the base for many future special education laws. In 2001, the No Child Left Behind Act was enacted. While the NCLB Act of 2001 had good intentions to ensure that even distribution of high-quality education for all students, it wasn't particularly directed towards students with disabilities. However, IDEA, which we'll talk about on the next slide, works to establish goals for children with disabilities that are consistent with goals and standards for children without disabilities, such as those established by NCLB. The Special Education Law was renamed and reauthorized many times since its original enactment in 1975. In 2004, the law was again reauthorized and became the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act of 2004, or IDEA. IDEA required special education teachers to be highly qualified in order to establish goals and standards to ensure improved graduation rates and lower dropout rates. IDEA had two major purposes: to provide an education that meets a child's unique needs and prepare children for the future education, employment, or independent living, and to protect the rights of both children with disabilities and their parents. This led to the requirement of state and local agencies to make special efforts to serve homeless students. Congress also discovered and described the critical need for highly trained personnel in order to achieve all the purposes of IDEA. My hopeful predictions for the future are that special education teachers will continue to be highly qualified and versatile. Working with special education departments has given me the hands-on experience with many types of situations that could be greatly improved. I've watched IDEA's work firsthand and continue to believe that students with disabilities are exceptional students. Something I would like to see in the future is more early intervention programs that allow smooth transition throughout the school year for students with high-functioning behavioral disabilities such as autism to remain in general education populations as much as possible. Something else I would like to see implemented in the future would be more resources for parents to get the special help they need to manage children that have disabilities both in and out of the school system. While inclusion is a major priority of IDEA, I have experienced seclusion and exclusion of a student firsthand. It is inappropriate as well as detrimental to our children to seclude them when it is not necessary. However, without proper resources, parents are not able to implement the same rules at home as what children are faced with at school. Further predictions are that the laws will continue to be reauthorized as well as improved to better benefit exceptional students and provide further resources to parents to ensure that an independent life is achievable. Thank you for your time. The following slide is a slide with resources that I have used in making this presentation.